Okay, so welcome everyone to the subject combination webinar. Okay, I'm Daryl and I'm joined today by Hanjin. And what we'll be going through is to run you through all the necessary information that you need to know in order to make a more informed choice for your subject combinations as you move into upper sec. All right, so just a little background about ourselves. So maybe I'll let Hanjin go first. Oh my God, the picture is swapped. Okay, never mind. Hanjin, you can go first.
Okay, hi guys. So I'm actually part of the Overmark O-level tutor team, but I take lower secondary math and science subjects. So I think most of you came from the Telegram channel. So as what Daryl mentioned earlier, yes, I along with Kaiwan, who is actually the upper sec math tutor, we handle the channel lah. So all the free notes or the curator notes, everything, okay, comes from us. Okay, so a bit about my educational background. I was from Chongqing High School, Maine. And then I took O-levels and went to Raffles JC. And then now I'm in NUS studying dentistry. So if you have any questions about like dentistry, you're also free to ask it later during the Q&A. Okay, Daryl.
Okay, for myself, I'm not too sure how many of you are actually familiar with me because I'm not being very active in the lower sec channel. But for myself, I'm a lot more active at the O-level side. Because I teach mainly upper secondary chemistry and physics. So I founded Overmark back during 2020 during the circuit breaker because of the large transition to online learning. That was how the whole community was built and stuff. For myself, I was in Catholic High. I went on to go to Temasek JC and I graduated from NTU last year. So I'll share more about my subject combination and how it impacted my choice later on. But I think all of this will go into it slightly deeper dive and to also give our advice based on our past experience. All right. So if not, without further ado, let's run through the content that we'll be covering today. So the first part, we will actually talk about the introduction to the subject streaming, like what's the purpose of this, how does it work? And then we want to do a deep dive into each individual subject. We won't be covering common subjects like English and E-Math, right? Because it's a compulsory subject. But we want to maybe give you a more detailed insight into the difference between choosing bio versus physics, or the difference between combined science and pure science. So that's the kind of analysis that we'll be going through based off our own personal experience. Then we'll want to run through some of the more common subject combinations that your seniors have taken. So just to give you a sensing of the workload, which one might suit your personality better. And then we'll talk about the different strengths and weaknesses of the different combinations. Then we'll move on to the giveaway contest, super simple instructions. Just take part, you'll win a free set of curated notes. And in the last segment, in the Q&A, this is when you can ask us any questions, we'll answer all of them. All right. So I think it's a pretty straightforward, cozy session. If you have popcorn with you, you can eat your popcorn and snacks and just listen in. All right. And at any point in time, if you have any questions, just type it in the chat. Okay. So let's talk about subject streaming first. Okay, so for subject streaming, the importance of this is in terms of how it will affect what you eventually take at your O levels. Okay, what do I mean by this? At lower sec, in sec 1 and sec 2, the entire cohort is taking the same sets of subjects, right? So you all take the same science, take all the same math. But as you move on from sec 2 to sec 3, by now you should know this process is called streaming, right? What's the purpose of streaming? Is to stream you all into your different classes based on the subject combinations that you take. This will be the exact same subjects that you'll be eventually taking at O level and N level when you're either sec 4 or sec 5. Okay, so there are obviously different combinations and different ones that work. Take note, it's different for every school because in different schools, they offer different subjects. So the kind of combinations that will be available to you would be different on a school-to-school basis, which is why it's important to take out the pamphlet that your school gave you or the PDF or whatever, right? And refer to that as your final decision-making. What we'll be sharing is based on the more common kind of subject streamings in most schools, but this doesn't apply to all schools. So just take note of that, okay? Now, why is it important? Okay, I think you really need to understand this, right? That whatever subject combination you choose to take at the moment, it will have implications down the line, which means after you choose this combination, not only will it impact the subjects that you take at O level, it could potentially affect the subjects that you take at A levels in JC, or subsequently the courses that you are eligible for in poly as well. So you need to note that even though you're making a decision right now, at 14 moving to 15, it might have impacts down the line, all right? So I just give you a simple example. Should you choose to take combined science, okay? And if you take combined science and you eventually want to go to a junior college and you want to take H2 chemistry, that jump is going to be very difficult. Why? It's because if you take combined science, the amount of content you learn is less compared to pure science. But you will need that pure science knowledge when you go on to JC. So that's just a very simple example to wrap your head around how it affects down the line. Of course, right now you might be thinking, I am so far away, I don't really care. But we just want to make sure all this information is available to you so you can make the most informed decision. Okay, at the bottom right, you'll see here, there's this image that's being shown here, right? What is shown here is actually the criteria for university. So you see that whatever you take right now will impact what you take in JC, and whatever you take in JC might really impact what you will take in university as well. So we'll share our personal experience later on, but just note that this subject streaming is not the kind that you can anyhow choose. I want to choose same as my friend. Try not to think of it that way. Choose something that would suit you, and we'll share more in terms of how to make the best decision for yourself. Okay, so there's a lot of subjects you can choose from. Like I said, try to refer to your school one, because some schools don't offer certain combinations. For example, one of the more recent O-level subjects that was introduced is econs, right? Which is not available in most schools, only a selected few 4 or 5 secondary schools right now. So some schools offer econs, but some don't. Some schools offer principle of accounts, right? Which is different from econs. Yeah, so like I said, this really depends on your school. So try to follow what your school gives, and then you can decide your combinations accordingly. Okay, now this is the most important part, I believe, that why most of you are here for, right? To understand the pros and cons of each subject. Of course, as tutors, we will share our own personal experience teaching these subjects. On top of that, we also share our personal experience studying these subjects back then when we were in upper sec. So to give you a better insight in terms of which one you might want to choose. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to jump into the different subjects. At this point in time, if you have questions, please ask. Okay, now there are 2 math that's available at upper sec. One is called E-math, that's elementary math. The second is called additional math, which is short form A-math. E-math is compulsory, which means no matter what combination you take, you will be doing E-math. E-math is very similar to the content you have been learning at secondary 1 and secondary 2. So a lot of, I would say, algebra, things like mensuration, which is like measurements and stuff. So those will be your typical math that you've been learning in primary school in Sec 1, Sec 2. That will be E-math. But there's this subject known as A-math. Typically, students who are better at math would take A-math. But what does A-math entail? A-math is much more difficult compared to E-math in that sense that it has a much steeper learning curve, because the way and the content that is being taught here is rather different from what you'll be used to in E-math. For example, we included a simple example here. I bet half of you cannot understand what this is, right? But by the end of your 2 years, you need to be able to prove this equation. So this is under trigonometry, specifically under the identities. So you see, this is not the kind of math that you might be thinking of in terms of your like algebra and stuff. Is quite different in that sense. However, that being said, if you're planning to go to a JC, this becomes super, super important. Why? Because the math that you'll be doing in JC is a lot of it is all from A-math. So I just give you a worst case scenario, which is now at this point, your math is not doing very well. You're getting maybe a C or a B4, and your school advises you not to take A-math, and you really go with that advice. That's completely fine. Okay, that's not a wrong thing to do. But take note, if by O-level and you eventually decide to move on to JC, as your peers that have taken A-math versus you who haven't taken A-math, you're going to struggle very, very, very badly. And when I say that, I truly mean it. In other words, if you're planning to head to a JC, you have to take A-math. Okay, that is the baseline advice that we give. The good news about A-math is that the question types are very standardized, which means the kind of questions you'll be expected to see is very, very straightforward. In that sense, with sufficient practice, actually most students tend to improve their A-math very quickly. My personal experience is that I was failing A-math in Sec 4, right? Around June, I was still failing. Then during June, I went for like intensive remedials by my teacher. by the time come prelim, I was getting an A2 already. So that kind of improvement is completely possible as long as you practice. Okay, so you understand, if you are planning to go to a JC, you need to take A math. Okay, now let's move on to the next subject. Got questions, must ask, can just type in the chat. Okay, so this is my own area of expertise because I teach pure physics. Okay, so this physics that you see here would be very similar to the physics that you have done in lower sec. Okay, so the physics here will deal with things like Newton's law. You learn about electricity. Okay, you learn about heat. You learn about waves and light. Okay, so the kind of concepts that are being tested here, they are relatively easy to understand. Because you can feel it, you can sense it based on logic. Now, if you're planning to go to JC to take physics, pure physics is strongly recommended as compared to combined physics. On top of that, if you're planning to go to to an engineering course in poly, then pure physics becomes super important because a lot of the aspects of engineering involves calculation related to math and physics. So if you're planning to go down that route, okay, take it. Okay. Now, there's something else I like to talk about physics, which is if you're good in math, taking physics is going to be a good choice because physics involves a lot of calculations revolving around math. So math and physics, there's a certain layer of like overlap in that sense. So if you're good in math, taking physics is usually a good choice. Okay. Then other than that, the paper format, there's actually 3 papers you'll need to take at O levels. So you have a practical assessment, which you go to the lab and then you play with the different stuff. Okay. Then there's an MCQ paper and there's an open-ended paper. So next week is actually the open-ended paper that your Sec 4 seniors are currently taking. Okay. So this is for pure physics. Overall, I wouldn't say it's too difficult at O level. Very relevant if you're taking physics in JC or you're planning to go to engineering eventually in poly. Okay. Next up, bio. Okay, now Hanjin will take over because I'm going to take a break.
Okay, hi. So I'll be talking about pure biology, which is like under my territory. Okay, so I did take pure biology in JC. I also took H2 biology, and now in uni, I guess you can say what I'm learning is also sort of relevant to biology. Okay, so I want to preface by saying, right, that the skill sets required to take biology are completely opposite to taking physics. Okay, so I guess if you are a very logical person, then physics will be piece of cake for you. Okay, but bio, the main thing you need to know is that there is a lot of memory work. Okay, it's not so much of calculations, there's not so much of concepts, but you have to be able to memorize a lot of content. So I'm sure you've seen like your volume A, volume B, lower secondary science books, right? Okay, that's only like less than half of the content that you need to memorize for your pure biology. Okay, so if you feel that right now, based on your experience taking like your secondary 1 and secondary 2 subjects that you just cannot memorize, you're like, oh, not even for science, but like my humanities, I totally cannot memorize my essays at all. Like I grind and grind, but I totally cannot memorize. Then you might want to rethink about taking biology, which is centered all around memory work. Okay, so there's not a lot to elaborate about pure biology because as I mentioned before, right, pure biology is really just about how much you're able to memorize. Okay, so I've included a sample question here. So this is like a standard secondary 4 question. Okay, so it's really, there's practically no calculations involved in biology. It's just about, are you able to recall the things that you've seen before in your textbook, in your notes, and are you able to write it in a way that is accurate, you have the correct keywords. If you have, good for you. You'll be able to score in biology, no problem. Okay, so I've written here as an additional info, okay, that pure biology is not a prerequisite if you want to enter a course in the future like medicine, dentistry, or other healthcare courses, even like nursing, allied health, like you want to be a physiotherapist. Okay, so I see in the chat, someone's asking, is it a prerequisite for a veterinary course? Okay, so for this, I'm actually not too sure, but I don't think that at O levels, right, pure biology is a prerequisite for future healthcare courses. Okay, the subject that is actually the most important will be pure chemistry. So I think maybe Daryl can elaborate a little bit more at the end about how important exactly chemistry is. But so if you're asking whether or not I recommend taking pure biology, do you like biology? If you do, I say go for it. Are you okay with memory work? It doesn't mean that you have to be a master at memory work. Okay, it doesn't mean that you have to be a type of person that, oh, you see textbook, oh, next morning, oh, I memorized the whole textbook already. No, but as long as you are able to commit to doing memorization, then you will be able to score in biology. Okay, and one more thing. if you want to take pure biology, do not take it with pure geography. The reason being is that pure geography is another subject that, whoa, you're going to be spending your nights trying to memorize the whole textbook. You don't want to be taking two memory intensive subjects, pure bio and pure geog. Okay? Yeah, I think that's about it for this. Okay, I'll take the next one as well. So this is combined science. So basically, combined science will be considered an easier form of a pure science. So instead of taking one paper per subject, so for example, if you take pure science, you take, I take a pure chemistry paper and let's say a pure physics paper. If you take combined science, you'll be taking one paper. So you take combined physics plus combined chem, or some schools offer combined physics plus combined bio. So there will just be one subject that will be in your O or N levels. Okay, so for combined science, they actually remove some of the more difficult topics from pure sciences. So if you like science, but you feel that, hey, I'm not really doing very well now, I'm getting a B4, C5, C6, or I'm just barely passing, okay, then maybe combined science is something that you want to consider if you're also very worried about, are you able to cope with a pure science? Okay, but however, as what Daryl mentioned earlier, okay, it's important to consider your future careers or your future plans post-secondary school. So for example, if you're planning to go to junior college, the jump from a combined science to a H2 science is going to be very, very much bigger than from a pure science to a H2 science. Okay, so if you know for a fact, okay, I want to go to junior college, I'm definitely going to take my H2 sciences in junior college, then I would recommend, if your school allows you to take pure science and you feel that, okay, I'm just going to put in more effort, more time to revising my sciences and I can improve, okay, I would say go for pure science. Yeah. Okay. So that's for combined science.
Yeah, but before I move on, I just wanted to add one last small point, which is if you're wondering whether you should take combined science or not, one good way to decide is that if you're stronger in humanities, like you feel like your niche and your strength is in humans, usually it makes sense for you to take combined science, because that means that when you go on to a JC, you will not be taking the JC science subjects. You'll be taking the JC humanities subjects. So in that sense, you might not want to load up too much on your sciences because you know you're more like humanities. You like your history, you like your literature better. Then in that sense, combined science would make sense for those group of students that we're discussing. Okay, but if you're planning to eventually enter the science stream in JC, which means you know you're a science student, not a human student, taking pure is very good. It's not very good. In fact, highly recommended if you're planning to move on to JC. Okay, I hope we make that point clear because this is really important. A lot of students that right now in Sec 2, they didn't do well for the science, but eventually in Sec 3 and 4, they improved a lot and then they move on to a JC. They really regretted not taking pure science back in Sec 3 and 4. So we don't want you guys to make the same sets of mistakes. So if you're going to a JC science, make sure you take pure. All right. Now, with that being said, let's talk about some of the more humanities subject here. I think for pure lit, it will still be Hanjin because personally, I didn't take pure lit. So I'll let her share more then.
Yep. Okay. So I think later me and Daryl will share about our specific subject combinations. But just as a preface, yes, I did take pure literature at O levels. Now, I really like pure lit, but there are specific skill sets that you should have ideally if you want to take pure literature. Okay. So literature is very different from being a bookworm. So just because you love to read, right, or you like to read Harry Potter books or whatever, it doesn't mean that you will like literature, and it also doesn't mean that you will score well in literature. So literature is a lot about being able to read between the lines and analyze pieces of texts. Actually, right, the books that you read in literature may actually be like one of the most boring pieces of books or like literature that you read. It's not going to be the kind of like romance books that you read. A lot of it is super boring and then you have to read over and over and over again. Your teacher will be running through the same lines for like weeks straight. Okay? But to me, literature is a super interesting subject because you really get to see the meanings behind like what the author is trying to say. You force yourself to like think and try and analyze what exactly the author is trying to say. What's the deeper meaning? Does it say something about society, etc., etc.? Okay? So ideally, if you want to take literature, you should have good language skills and essay writing. Okay, this means that your grammar should be okay. You should be able to write at least relatively good essays. Okay, because literature, there's no MCQ, there's no like calculations or whatever. It's all just essay writing. Okay, and there's also 2 papers. So generally, different schools will have different books. You don't get to choose your books. So if you can, right, it'll be good to check what books your schools will be doing. Then you can take a look. Oh, maybe this book you really, really think you're not going to like. Then what's the point of taking pure literature, right? Okay. And then for the book that your school chooses for you, you will be sticking to it for the 2 years. And that will be the book that you'll be analyzing or like writing your essays about during your O levels. Okay. So if you feel that, hey, I'm not really this kind of person, I don't like to like read between the lines, like, oh, what does the curtain being blue mean about society, that kind of person, right? Okay, then I don't think literature will be for you. So you can consider, I don't know, geography, history. You can let Daryl talk about it later. Okay?
Jin, I think there's one question from Eunice. For school, it says it's compulsory for everyone to take elective lit or full lit. So what's the difference between elective and pure literature?
Okay, that's a good question. So I think there are certain differences between pure lit and elect lit. Yes, I think there will be paper differences in the sense that if I am not mistaken, you won't be doing one of the texts. So when you're doing pure lit, right, you'll be taking a book. You'll be taking 2 books actually. Okay, so that will be under, one of it will be in paper 1, one will be in paper 2. But I think for elective lit, right, you only be doing 1 text. Okay, so this is something that I can check for you right now because I don't want to give you misinformation on this. And I'll get back to you in a bit, okay?
Meanwhile, I'll take over and I want to talk about the remaining 2 humanities, some 2 more common ones. Okay, so the first being pure geography. So for myself, I did take pure geography at O level, and I went on to JC to take geography as well. Now, for geography, the sort of exposure that you'll be getting will be similar to what you have seen in lower sec. You'll be studying mainly 2 themes, the physical world and the human world. So under the physical world, it will deal with things like plate tectonics, your volcanoes, nature, your forests and stuff. So very nature-based. If you're a nature lover and you want to understand how does fold mountains form and stuff, I think pure geography might be the right subject for you. For human side, it involves things like globalization. It talks about food. It talks about people, more of societal stuff, but not so political in nature. It's more of the science of humans and how humans interact. So the 2 sets of content that you'll be required to study is actually quite different. Now, what's the difference between pure and elective here? So let me address that as well. So I think similar for most humanities, it's just that the content you'll be required to cover is a lot lesser. So for pure geography, you might have, say, 4 topics to study, but maybe in elective, you only need to study 2 or 3. I don't want to give you the exact one because it's been a while since I last did pure geog back in O level, but in terms of the content, it's a lot lesser. Now, just take note that for pure geography, the content is super, super heavy. So by now, you might have a taste of it in terms of the amount of content you need to memorize, the examples that you need to know at the back of your head. So in terms of content load, is actually quite heavy. Taking it with bio might be quite scary, as mentioned earlier, because of both subjects requiring large amount of memorization and content. Okay. That being said, for geography, you also need to have decent essay writing skills because there won't be an MCQ question. Okay, most of the questions in form of writing. So you need to have good writing skills, and you also need to be slightly interested in the world affairs. So like global warming and stuff, you kind of need to know it quite well. I mean, if you want to do geography. And of course, if you take geography at JC, taking pure geography at O levels is going to be super, super helpful. Speaking from real life experience. Okay, so EP has a question. What is geog like in JC? Geography in JC is similar to what you'll be taking in pure geography. So it's literally an add-on. You'll go deeper into those subjects. You'll be learning them more in depth. But in terms of the skill set and content, it is still physical and human geography. So it's just an add-on as you move on from secondary school to A levels. Okay, so I hope that that clears things up. Okay, earlier I got a question, right, from Faith, I think. She was asking me about, hey, what if I'm taking pure bio? Should I still take pure geography, or can I take pure bio and pure history? So I'll touch on this later after I cover both pure geog and pure history. Okay. GL have a question here. Is it advisable to take geog elect or history elect? Okay, let me address this straight away. So I myself, I took pure geography and I took combined humanities, which is elective history. So I took the heavier full version of geography and I took the lighter version for history. But The cool fact is that afterwards, when I was in university, I was actually working at one of the publishers that do assessment book, and I was writing out all the content for them. So I actually covered a bit of pure history content as well. Basically, I was the guy that was writing the answer sheet. Okay, you know, if you buy assessment book, there's an answer sheet, right? I was writing it. So in that sense, I'm quite familiar with what is being covered in pure history as well. Now, for pure history, the set of stuff that you'll be studying is very different from pure geography. Pure geography is all about the now, right? You want to study the nature, how is it like? Humans, how do they behave now? But for pure history, as the name implies, it's all about history. In that sense, you'll be studying things like World War II, right? So you'll be studying things like Cold War, okay? You might have come across these historic events in movies or Netflix series and stuff, but what you'll be studying is the exact events that have happened, the people that are involved, how did everything pan out leading to the world that we live in today. Now, take note that pure history is also super heavy in content, but the sort of content that you'll be exposed to here will be different from geography, right? So as I mentioned earlier, geog is about the world around us. History is about the world that we used to live in. And on top of that, for pure history, there's a very specific segment known as SBQ that is called your source-based questions. These source-based questions, basically what they'll give you is a piece of information or a picture, and you're supposed to make deductions and inference from it. Then in the second paper, you'll be required to write essays as per what you've been exposed to now. Okay, take note, at lower sec, the history that you're exposed to is Singapore history, right? You learn about the world, how Singapore come to independence, the riots and stuff. But take note, if you move on to pure history, you will not be studying Singapore at all. You will be studying instead the world around you. For example, like I said, you'll be studying about Europe, you'll be studying about US versus Russia, which back then was called Soviet Union. And if you take pure history, you'll be studying the Southeast Asia history as well. So the sort of content that you'll be exposed to will be very different. No more Singapore, okay? It's about the other countries in the world. Now, okay, so between pure geography and pure history, which one do I recommend? I would say if you like war stuff, if you're interested in war and politics, I think taking pure history might suit your interest better. So between pure geog and pure history is completely dependent on your interest. Which one you have liking towards more. There isn't which one is easier. Both are content heavy, both are difficult, both have skill sets that you need to learn. But if you're interested in one more than the other, it's going to make it a lot easier to study. Similar to pure lit. So if you don't have a passion for any of this, I suggest you don't take the pure. The most you would want to go is elective. Okay, so between pure geog and history, choose the one that you like more. Now, is it possible for you to take pure geog and pure bio, or pure history and pure bio? The answer is yes. I personally took it. Okay, so I'll share more about our own subject combinations later on. But for myself, I did pure geog and I took triple science as well. On top of that, I did combine history and SS. So as you can see, there's a lot of content based on the combination that I chose. Okay, but was it possible? Yes, I still got A1 for everything. So it is possible. But is it going to be tough? Yes, it was quite tough. Okay, so I put it out there. Is it possible? Of course you can do it. But you just need to be dedicating a lot more time and effort compared to your peers. But later on, let us advise you on whether you should take it or not, based on a more strategic perspective on why you need to take how many subjects. Okay?
Okay, sorry, can you go back to the pure lit? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So just to clarify the concerns regarding pure lit and elect lit, okay? So as you can see in pure lit, right, you have paper 1, which is prose and unseen poetry. So prose is the text that will be selected for, like the specific text that your school wants to use. And unseen poetry, on the other hand, will be standard across all students taking pure lit. So basically, they'll just give you a random like piece of text and you have to analyze it and write an essay about it. Okay, then paper 2 will be drama. So there'll be another piece of text that is specific to your school. So if you are going to take elective literature, okay, you won't have paper 2, which is drama. So like I mentioned earlier, you will only be having one selected text for your school, but you still have to do unseen poetry paper. Okay, and then I also have another question, which is for pure lit, is it relevant if you're going to take H2 lit in JC? Okay, so as a general rule of thumb, right, if you already know what subjects that you are most likely going to take in junior college, like you're like, okay, I really like this subject, I'm like 95% sure I'm going to take it in JC, okay, then it is super advisable to just take that subject at O level as well. Okay, it doesn't make sense to take a totally different subject and then after that transition to a totally different subject in junior college. So if you already know, okay, I love lit, I want to take H2 lit in JC, okay, by all means, go ahead and take pure literature at O levels as well. Okay.
Okay, Hanji, I think there's another question here from Eileen, like on our opinions, whether we should take elective history and pure lit at the same time. Maybe I'll let you share first, since you take both, I think.
Okay, oh, I can't see the question. Okay, but yes, I did actually take pure literature as well as elective history. Okay, the reason being I'm just not interested in geography. Like I did not care how tectonics plate move and how volcanoes were formed. So it was very obvious for me that okay, I was gonna take literature and history. In terms of like the content that you need to memorize and all, I think it's manageable. In general, I still think that the content you memorize is less than pure biology. So by all means, go ahead and take pure literature and elective history. Actually, in my secondary school, which is Chongqing, that was considered the slackest combination, which is that is the least amount of work we need to do for the best amount of grades. Yes.
Yeah, personally, I didn't take pure lit because my English is not good. So my English is really not that good. That's why I couldn't take lit. For myself, I took pure geog and combined history. So that was pretty much like as heavy a content as it could be. On top of that, I was taking pure bio. So like I say, like it's possible, but it was quite tough. Would I have done it again? I don't know, because I DS8 anyway. So that's besides the point. But I think in terms of pure content workload, some might struggle because it's really not that easy. Okay, so I hope we made it clear in terms of between pure lit, pure geog, pure history, which one you should take. Very simple answer, take based on your interest. Based on your exposure that you have seen so far in Sec 1 and Sec 2, you will have a better idea of which one you will suit best lah. Because you'll be studying it over the next 2 years, potentially in JC as well. So if you're going down that route, might as well study something that you're interested in. Which one is easiest to score? The answer is that they all require practice as well as revision in order for you to do well. So there is no like best combination here between the three choices. Okay. So with that, let's move on some of the least common kind of subjects that's being offered. One of it is POA. So for POA, I'll talk about this really briefly. Basically, if you're interested in anything related to business or finance, this might be a subject that you will be interested in, because this is very relevant for students that went on to do business or accountancy courses in poly or even in university. So this is quite niche in that sense. I do think this is quite relevant to real life as compared to studying history and geog. But just take note that the learning curve might be quite steep, because you'll be unlike anything you have studied before. You learn about how does inventory work, you learn about profit, losses, whatever. I mean, I did not take this subject, but at least based on my understanding, it deals a lot with how businesses run, accounting, and the balance sheets. Okay. For those interested in investing, this is a good one to take, right? If you want to like buy GME and to the moon, right? For those that know what I mean, yes, these are relevant subjects that you might want to consider. Okay, some of the less discussed one would be D&T and art. Obviously, both me and Hanjin, we didn't take this subject, so we can't really advise you very deeply on this. But overall, based on our understanding for people that actually did it, coursework is super important. You need to be very consistent with the progress that you're making, because you're usually working on a project over a certain prolonged period of time, over a few semesters and terms. So you need to keep up with the work in that sense. Okay, so I think from that perspective, if you're interested in things related to D&T and art, go for it. Okay, but just take note that art is also not just about art. You need to study theories and past artists and their own philosophies and stuff. So there's also the content portion of it. It's not just doing your coursework only. Same for D&T. Okay, so take note, there's still involved studying for these two subjects. Okay, and lastly, we want to talk about the common subject combinations here. Okay, now we have finished discussing each subject in detail, but of course we'll come back to it again when we're talking about the common subject combinations. Now, like we mentioned earlier, each school, what they will offer is different. So your subject combinations that's available to you might not be the exact same one you see as what's on the screen, but there will be a certain similarity overall, because there is a certain minimum criteria you have to meet for your subject combinations. But in order for you to make an informed decision on your subject combination, you need to understand its implication on your O levels, right? Because whatever you're taking in upper sec is meant for you to take at O levels, which will determine your entry path into JC or poly, right? And that depends on your score based on the L1, R5 or L1, R4 grading system. I don't want to spend too long on this because I know at this point it might not be super relevant for you, but just take note that when you're calculating your O-level score, you need a minimum of 1 math, science, and humanities. Your L1 is obviously your language. For most people, it will be your English language. Okay, so I keep things simple. If you're going to a JC, you minimally need to take at least 1 math, 1 science, and 1 humanities. Overall, your 6 best subjects, including English, would be used to tabulate your score. Okay, and if you're going to poly, same thing, you need your English, you need 2 relevant subjects and your 2 remaining best subjects. A total of 5 subjects would be used to tabulate your score. So think of L1, R5 as English plus 5 subjects. L1, R4 as English plus 4 subjects. Okay, so whatever subject combination your school will be offering would be relevant to your calculation for your O-level score in that sense. Okay, so I hope this is a bit clearer in terms of why certain subject combinations would happen. Okay, now let's talk about the more common one, more common subject combinations. Okay, I'll let Han Jin take over at this point because I'm a bit tired.
Okay, so I think we're gonna start off with 8 subjects. If you want to take 8 subjects at O levels, okay, so we're gonna skip 9 subjects because, to my understanding, a lot of schools have actually dropped 9 subject combinations because a lot of students were unable to cope with it. Okay, so of course, if it's 9 subjects, it's very standard. It will just be triple science or with your pure humanities and then your elective humanities. Okay, but for 8 subjects, you will have a little bit more choice in terms of like how you want to arrange your subjects to hit that 8 subject requirement. Okay, so just to preface, right, we say 8 subjects, but as you can tell here, we're not listing out literally 8 subjects. Okay, out of these 8 subjects, right, you have your compulsory subjects like your English, your mother tongue, and your E-math. Okay, and we're also going to take into account additional math because pretty much all students that take 8 subjects will be taking A-math. If you're not going to take A-math, then generally you shouldn't be considering 8 subjects. Okay, so if you want to take 8 subjects, what can you consider? We ranked here, okay, I don't know why it's 111, but it's supposed to be 1, 2, 3 according to what is the most common or what is the one that students like to take the most. Okay, and the very first one will be triple science with 1 elective humanities. Okay, so you'll be taking pure physics, pure chem, pure bio, and 1 elective humans. Now, the humans itself doesn't matter. Like, we don't have a rank for it. It's not like, okay, elect history is better than elect geog or elect lit is better than elect history. Okay, this will be purely up to your own strengths. Okay, so if you feel that, okay, I'm better in geography, then by all means, take triple science and elect geog. Okay, and you also have to check whether or not your school offers that specific combination. So back in my secondary school, we did have triple science classes, but we only had triple science and elect his or elect geog. There was no triple science and elect lit classes. So once again, we go back to the point. Every school is different. The demand for subjects in every school will also be different. So what you choose now may also not be the subject combination that you will be receiving at the end of the day. Okay, but what if, let's say, you don't want to take triple science? You think, only 2 of my sciences are good, or I just don't think I can cope with triple pure science. Then what's the next best or what is the next most popular combination? Okay, it will be double science with 1 pure humans and 1 elective humans. Okay, so the one that is more common will be taking pure physics with pure chemistry over pure bio and pure chemistry. So I think, as Daryl has mentioned previously in his talk, okay, there are a lot of practical reasons why a lot of teachers or a lot of people in general recommend taking physics over chemistry. If you are equally interested or equally strong in both physics and biology, and you're not really sure about what you want to do in the future, you're like, okay, I want to keep my options open in life. Okay, then I would recommend take pure physics and pure chemistry. The reason is simple. As I've said before, Daryl has also elaborated before. Okay, if you are going to consider engineering or math related things in the future, physics background will help you a lot. Okay, so pure physics, pure chem with 1 pure humans and 1 elective humans. So once again, the specific pure humans or elective humans, we don't really want to rank it. because it's really up to you. It's up to your strengths and whether or not your school is able to provide for that specific combination. Okay, and lastly, the next most popular 8-subject combination will be pure bio, pure chem with a pure humanities and an elective humanities. So the third option is actually my subject combination at O-levels. I took pure bio, pure chem, pure literature, as well as elective history. Okay, so just because it wasn't the most popular combination, people think, oh, this one confirm not going to be in a good class or whatever. It didn't mean that I could not do well in O-levels. Okay, so don't just think that, oh, I must choose the most popular combination to do well. Choose what you think you can score best in. Okay, so that's for 8 subjects. Then we're going to do the 7 subjects.
Okay, I'll do the 7 subjects. Okay, so for 7 subjects, the reason why we recommend this is because, as we have mentioned earlier, at O-levels, at the end of the day, you'll only be taking at most L1 plus R5. So you only need 6 subjects to go into your best score for you to tabulate the L1 R5 for your eligibility for your different JCs. Taking 7 subjects means you have a 1 subject buffer. So say in case you screw up 1 subject, you at least have another replacement for it. I give you a common one. Your Chinese suck, okay, or your higher mother tongue sucks. Like your mother tongue is not good at all, so you tend to not do well in it. That's when your mother tongue would drop out of your subject combination, and you might need to use that last remaining subject as half your L1 R5. Okay. Sorry, we only wrote Chinese here because when we were doing, both of us, we took Chinese. That's why we wrote down Chinese. But what we're referring to is just generically mother tongue for everyone. Okay. Now, 7 subjects is recommended because in terms of the workload, this would be ideal. So the more common one that most people take is actually double science. Take note that for double science, it's not just pure physics and pure chem. There's also pure bio and pure chemistry. So, but having said that, pure chemistry is almost compulsory in that sense. Okay, so no matter what, it will be either physics chem or biochem. On top of that, you will take elective humanities. That means you will take elective history, elective lit, or elective geog. Okay, for those that are more inclined towards the humanities side, what you might want to opt for is the combined science, which is a much reduced version of the pure science. On top of that, you'll be taking your 1 pure and 1 elective. So in that sense, no matter how you mix and match, whether you're leaning more towards the science side or whether you're leaning more towards the humanities side, at the end of the day, including your English, mother tongue, A-math, and E-math, you have a total of 7 subjects, out of which you only need 6 for your O-level. So this, in terms of workload, right, this is usually the one that most students find that, I can cope with the best. That being said, before that, as we are discussing the 8 subject combinations, as Han Jun pointed out, it has its pros and cons too, right? Because you need a bit more flexibility and more leeway. The 7 subject, what this implies, right, is that while you have lesser things to study, you need to have a higher degree of conviction and certainty that you'll do well. Because in this case, if you screw up 1 subject, it might really affect your score. Meanwhile, if you take 8 subjects and you have that leeway and buffer, you can afford to screw up for 1 subject and leave that aside and not have to use it as part of your O-level score. But for 7 subjects, it's going to be cutting it very close. Okay, so you need to weigh the pros and cons. There isn't a definitely better choice, but we're just advising you based on our past experience working with different groups of students, what they have told us in terms of workload, what is manageable and what is not. Okay, so this is for the 7 subject combination. Okay, so we talked about the 8 and the 7 subject combination. Of course, there are still other combinations that have 9. Or for myself, I took 10 subjects. I think I took 9 or 10 subjects at O-level. That's a bit on the extreme side. But there are also people that take 6 subjects only because they're aiming mainly for poly. And in poly, you only need an L1, R4. So of course, combinations will differ from school to school. But I hope that we outline to you the rationale between choosing 8 and choosing 7. Why is it good? Why is it bad? Okay, so here we have some very commonly asked questions and want to address them upfront. Okay, on top of that, we would talk about some of the questions that you guys have asked. So for the first question here, you have done all 3 sciences and you feel like you're not strong in chemistry. So can you only do physics and bio? The answer is, can you do it? Yes, you can technically take physics and bio, but is it advised? The answer is no. Okay, the reason for this is because, say, moving on beyond O-level and you think about your options in the future, a lot of courses in poly, a lot of courses in university will require knowledge in chemistry, which is why pure chemistry is always highly recommended, even though you might struggle to study the content because you find it more difficult right now. It has a much larger application. So a case in point, as Hanjin has mentioned, to go to medicine or dentistry, you actually do not need bio, but you actually need chemistry. So in that sense, I hope I highlight here how important chemistry is. Okay, so can you really take physics, bio? You can. So I had a friend back in secondary school that took this combination. It sucked. Why, right? Because the whole class is taking the same stuff. He's taking something different, which means his timetable is super different as well. So that might be something else that you haven't considered if you want to take the abnormal route. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Okay, the next question, you're not strong in math, so you're unsure whether you should take A math. Okay, I'll let Hanjin answer this one.
Oh, okay. Do I think students should take A math? Short answer, yes. Okay. So in general, okay, I think a lot of students right now, they might be thinking, okay, I just borderline passed my math. I'm getting B4, C5. I don't know if I'm able to cope with taking A math, especially since Daryl has mentioned, it's going to be a very steep learning curve. You're going to learn very, very new topics that you've never covered before in your life. Okay. But I do think that A math is something that once you're able to get past that learning curve, okay, it's going to be super easy because the questions are exactly the same every year. If you see the TYS, seriously, it's like they just repeat and recycle the questions. They just change the values only. Okay. When I started taking A math in secondary 3, okay, I was failing. I got a D7 at the end of Sec 3 for A math. And I was so demoralized. I was like, wait, was this even the right choice? I don't know if I can do this. But in the end, I still got A1. So it's really not something that you have to be too concerned or too worried about, because with the right amount of practice, okay, if you have the right guidance, okay, A math is really something that you can conquer. Okay, but if you really feel like, okay, right now I'm really getting like F9 for math, E8, I really like don't understand math, it's just not going to my head, then okay, I think you can consider again. And if you think it's really not something you can do, then don't force yourself, then don't take it. Okay?
Okay, then the last question here is that your subject combination might be quite unique. So a few of you were discussing when you take art, what kind of combinations and stuff. Now, for the more unique combinations, right, I think we just want to say this. If you have a deep interest in music, in art, in, let's say, D&T, whatsoever, if you know that it's something that you're interested in, you will tend to do well in it. Should you pursue this unique combination? Of course, I think go for it. Don't be afraid to take a different route, but also understand the implications of taking that. So based on the more unique subject combinations, this one we won't be able to offer our personal experience as much because we haven't been through it. But having spoke to people, my friends back then that took art and stuff, they really enjoyed it. They found it sort of like an escape from the academic rigor that they don't like, because eventually when they move on to university, they went into the passion fields that they're interested in. So in that sense, studying like these subjects became a lot more enjoyable for them as compared to the academic subjects. So I say don't be afraid to make that choice, but you need to have a high degree of conviction in terms of what you like. You cannot say that, oh, right now I kind of like it, then you go and take it, then you realize actually, I don't really like it. How? Is it too late now? That's when you might struggle because of the choice you have made and how it might impact the sort of decisions you might make down the line. Okay, so just make sure if you're going with a unique combination, have a high degree of conviction. On top of that, stick with it. Okay, don't say you regret it. Don't second guess yourself. Just go with it. Okay, usually things pan out. All right. Now, with that, I think we are done with the FAQs. We'll answer all of your questions at the Q&A section after this. But I just wanted to share a bit of news because I thought that this might be relevant for some of you. So for myself, as I introduced earlier, I teach mainly chemistry and physics. I know you haven't chosen your subject combinations yet. That's cool, all right? But usually I'll always open up one class of Sec 3 students that I'll be teaching, that I'll also teach in Sec 4 leading up to O-level. So if you're interested in joining my group tuition, you can simply scan the QR code. Take note that the first lesson will only start next year. So even if you sign up now, at most, I'll just contact you and keep in touch with you because you do not know your subject combination yet. So I think that's completely fine. But if you are interested for me to teach you and to guide you through both Sec 3 and 4 towards your O-level, I think this might be something you will want to consider lah. Okay, so this is mainly for students that are taking pure chemistry and pure physics. Because you're learning both subjects under me, it will be an alternate combination. So 1 week we do Chem, 1 week do physics, next week we do Chem. Okay, so I'll see you once a week. Take note that this is limited to the first 8 packs only. All right, so I only open up one Sec 3 class every year. So if you're interested, sign up. Okay, take note that the first trial lesson is free lah. So you can just come see whether you like me. You don't like me, you can say no lah. Up to you. Okay, it's very chill. Okay, the locations at Toa Payoh is at this space called Spatial Collective. So Spatial Collective, as you can see, is the picture you see on the top right. It's basically a co-study space. So you can actually go there to study by yourself, but we'll actually be using the classroom to conduct our lessons, as you can see in the bottom picture. All right, so this is just an option for all of you. If you're interested, you can sign up. If this is not something you're interested in, you don't have to sign up lah. Okay, this is really up to you. Okay, if not, okay, I'll actually stop the recording session now. We'll proceed on with the giveaway.